All right, here we go. So, what a day it's been. It is another long one. Started out early this morning, and New Jersey Transit wasn't necessarily being very cooperative, so I took me a little while, although I did have a nice early stroll through Manhattan because I had to make a connection through the PATH train, which for those of you that don't know, it is the train traditionally that one would take to go from Hoboken, New Jersey, the traditional endpoint, terminus of the Pennsylvania Railroad system, as it was once called, the Erie-Lackawanna. And but then once they made the direct, Midtown Direct, as they call it, very few people make that use the PATH train, but today everybody had to this morning because there were some problems. So anyway, finally made it to Hofstra, taught my class, had every intention of recording my video post-recording another Musings session, so I think I might link in Musings. Oh no, I already have done that, so that is, check out the blog for some for the Musings that was recorded today. Anyway, I went back to my office and was going to talk a little bit about running into a former student of mine who I see at the gym in the weight room quite often. His name is Jenny, and he took a class with me, a philosophy of education class. He reminded me it was 12 years ago, but for some reason it seems like it was just last summer. And every time I meet with him, we have a brief catch-up, and today we were talking about how, as he put it, the material for philosophy, that is to read it, is so widely available, but yet in almost proportion to that you have less and less interest in philosophy. And we talked a little bit about that. And I thought about this blog, and I thought about the fact that there are for sure very, 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 very few people who are watching these videos and who are listening to my reading of Being and Learning, commemoration of the writing from 10 years ago. And, but I thought, that's not really the point. The point is, it's really, first and foremost, a documentary work that I'm doing here, going through and experiencing the writing that I did 10 years ago. And on that note, let's move forward. Again, this material is not in the final edition of the book, Being and Learning. The writing that happened between 4/20, April the 20th, ironically 4/20, and 4/26 is just not part of Being and Learning. So the final line of the meditation from 4:19 is the last line of chapter 4, and the midway point of the meditation from 4:26 is where chapter 5 begins. So what I've been reading in the last couple days, and we'll be reading today, is only preserved in the original pages. And at this point, I've brought the binders with me from Hofstra because I will be going back to Portland for the summer. That's just the binder, the maroon binder, binder number 1. I'll be going back to Portland for the summer, and just in case there was some problem with the copies, I decided to just haul them up to Portland and keep them up there at this point. Okay, so let's continue on. Again, the last line we read is the last line of the allegory, which is, if they could lay hands on the one who was trying to set them free and lead them up, they would kill him. Our retelling of the story anticipates that upon his return he will be heard by those who are prepared to move on, and misunderstood by those who are not. We understand the taking up of his old place, his former seat, is an attempt rendered impossible by the new condition he finds himself in. The reaction from his former companions, the ridicule mixed with anger toward the one liberated, the one who appears responsible for this transformation, depicts the impossibility of regression, of his returning to his former place. There is no return for the one who has been wrested from the abode of concealment and drawn out into the open region. We recognize how the return of the liberated one is akin to the revelation that Diotima spoke of in her conversation with Socrates. He has been recalled after contemplating the sun and understanding the unifying relation that exists between all living beings. This revelation recalls to us what Diotima revealed to Socrates when she spoke of the one that subsists and unifies the many. There's an important link here between the two revelations. In both cases, we should understand the one as manifesting through love, the phenomena we must attempt to spread in order to cultivate a community, a congregation of friends. It is the desire to cultivate this fellowship that drives Socrates to form friends through dialogue and drives the liberated one to return to seek out those who are prepared and ready to hear the call. Plato is drawing on Heraclitus in depicting the unifying force of the sun, Helios. Heraclitus understood the one, hen, that unifies the many, panta, to be manifesting in lightning, fire, and other images. The sun is a visible analog of hen. By providing an illuminating clearing, the sun brings the many things of the universe, panta, together for a unified hen perception. It's a quotation, I believe, from Sherman. The unified perception appears in the attunement to the horizon of beings as a horizon, as horos, a boundary or limit. The horizon is the ultimate circle where sky and earth meet. The horizon is when the light from the sun meets the land and or the water. It can also denote, quote, the fullest range or widest limit of perception, interest, appreciation, knowledge of experience, unquote. Horizon is both the expansive and the limit, the boundary. Also a threshold standing between and linking together. Here, the horizon is perceived in the manifold appearance of relationality. Relationality, the unification of the many through reciprocation, a relation of reciprocal exchange we've called the twofold play, persists as the horizon of beings and the processual unfolding of being. Thus, Diotima's message of the nothing that offers the condition for the possibility of being's processual unfolding. Here we see the nothing as the gap appearing as the threshold, the horizon. It is the location for both beings appearing and disappearing, the beyond as the ultimate context, location, topos as horos. Attunement is the awareness of this manifold appearance, the perception of the unity of all unifying relations. Both the liberated prisoner and Socrates experienced this revelation and in turn were compelled to spread the tidings. Each returns and engages their companions as the bearer of the revelation, as the messenger who arrives from beyond. Socrates, arriving at the home of Agathon, is akin to the liberated one's return to the cave. If the sage is the bearer of the news, the seer of the sun, then they are also the one compelled to cultivate relationality, to care for the congregation, to shepherd. This is why Socrates claimed to, quote, cultivate and worship all the elements of love and bid others do the same. The liberated one who returns from the beyond also bears this message and is driven by this desire to recollect his companions. But will we hear him? That's an interesting conclusion. Very interesting. So there's this whole sort of prophetic thing going on here with this meditation. And it's definitely, I like this meditation. It's too bad that this material didn't appear in the final edition of Being and Learning. I like it because it's, one of those circles. It goes back and sort of connects, I think really importantly, the allegory and this eros, or this desire of the liberated one to return to the cave and to connect with his former cave dwellers, and Socrates. And so, of course, the point has been made that Socrates is, is sort of the figure that is actually, Socrates could be seen as the one who was emancipated. He's also can be seen as the one who is emancipating, even though he is the voice who's telling the story. But the notion that there's a link between the story of the emancipation of this cave dweller and the paideia that brings that about, and then what Socrates was up to is pretty clear. But the link I'm making is specifically to Diotima and to the discussion from chapter 3 on Socrates, or rather chapter 2 on Socrates, where I talked about the one and only teaching that Socrates received, which was the doctrine from Diotima on love as the unifying force. So what I'm suggesting here is that the unifying force of love is the eros that brings together that is the desire behind the cave dweller, a liberated, emancipated cave dweller's desire to reconnect with his fellow cave dwellers. And so what I'm suggesting is that's really what is motivating him. It doesn't answer the question that I left off with yesterday, which was the sort of confusing place that this emancipated one finds himself in when he returns, which is to say, he's empowered by the process that he's experienced, but at the same time, he's powerless when he returns to the cave, when he returns to his fellow cave dwellers. It's interesting because the allegory says that he would want or try to take up his former place. It doesn't say that he's there to, rally them to leave. And in fact, that's my own reimagination, so I'm suggesting, because what would be the purpose of his going back? I mean, in terms of the allegory, you could say, well, the purpose is to show that, from the point of view of the cave dwellers, his eyesight is ruined. So, there's this, he needs to be forced to go back so that we, the people who are listening to the story, reading the Republic, will understand that there is this contrast between the perception in the cave and the perception outside of the cave. But that's kind of a convoluted logic, right? I mean, why? Because in the narrative of the story, Socrates says to Glaucon, he would be forced to, he would have to be forced to go back to the cave. Well, why? So I'm suggesting that really we reimagine that he desires to go back to the cave, and the desire is motivated by his desire to reconnect with his fellow cave dwellers, and not only to reconnect with them, but to bring them back out into the open region with him. But and I'm suggesting that that's this eros that's driving him to do that. But what we learn, and what sort of left sort of unanswerable and remains a question, is to what extent is this eros, this drive and this desire, rendering us sort of powerless? And I guess, using something that my colleague Tyson Lewis is fond of, it renders him impotent. He just can only feel his potentiality, but he can't do anything in the face of the power of those who remain sort of chained. And then the story that in the cave, in chains, chained to the cave wall, it really starts to spin a bit out of control at some point, because again, for me, the notion that all of a sudden they recognize that he's gone and come back, and there's absolutely no curiosity on their part. I mean, it's kind of a forced sort of allegory. But all right, I'm going to leave it at that before we have a technical difficulty.